metal, and I'm not saying that to say it. It's absolutely true. He's incredible. Check out Seventh Wonder, by the way, which I'm an absolute fanboy of, and Tommy's magnificent in that band. And I think
Seventh Wonder has a new CD coming out later this year, by the way.
Well, that's going to be the absolute dude. It's right up there with Circus Maximus for me of albums that I really wanted to hear or want to hear in 2016. Hopefully, it will be nothing like Circus Maximus's album. But that, and then it reminds me of Stu Block from Iced Earth, who is can sound like Matt Barlow, but also has his own sound as well. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens with AC/DC and what happens with the rest of the tour and with Axl Rose. And, of course, Biv being a huge GNR fan and a huge Axl fan, I'm sure. Since he's in charge of the news, we're going to hear more from that in future episodes of According to Metal.
No, I wouldn't be shocked. Not at all. But, speaking of hearing more of something, we've talked Anubis Gate on this show quite a bit. And when, was it episode 1 or 2? I can't remember now.
We were talking about episode with Kim.
Oh, okay. All right. Number 3. The box set. No, actually, it was episode 1. It was when Lance King was on, and he was talking about the Anubis Gate box set.
When he announced it, you're right.
And so they announced they launched it then, and it was a 60-day Kickstarter campaign. Now, the way this works is you essentially pledge a certain amount of money depending on what it is you want to buy, and if they hit the dollar amount of pledges, then you're charged that amount and they send you those goods, whatever it is you bought, whether it's, the bonus edition, deluxe edition with the t-shirt, whatever. But, so they announced it then, and they initially got a great response. And then, of course, you kind of have that lag period in the middle where there's not much activity. And the band was getting nervous, and Kim was getting nervous, and Lacey Mucklow, who was also on the show, who did a special review for us, she's been pushing for it. It got down to the final days, and in the last 12 hours, they made it, and they've reached 104% of their goal. So they've reached what they needed to do to produce it. It will be coming out, and not only will the people who pledge their money get those purchases, but there is going to be some left over that will be for sale on the Nightmare Records website. So be looking for that. If you didn't get an opportunity to get in on the Kickstarter campaign to get the Anubis Gate 6 CD box set, have no fear, you can still get it. But be on the lookout for it. It will be a very limited amount that is still available.
And I could say this right now, I was following that pretty closely, and because you're rooting for Kim, you're rooting from the guys from Anubis Gate, and you're seeing the numbers kind of go up and then kind of get stagnant and stay there. And we're talking like 24 hours before this thing's supposed to expire, and they were several $1,000s away. Easy.
Oh, yeah. They were $6,000 away.
And I remember going, they're not going to make this. This really sucks. And just huge amount of support at the very, very end. So the Orbits box set is a go. We're really excited about that. I will reach out to Lance or maybe Kim. I don't know which one. If either of you are listening, please set one aside for Jason, your good friend here at According to Metal, because I definitely want to make sure I pick that up. And I will say this, and this was a great point by the band and a great point by Kim, which is, of all the Anubis Gate albums that are out there, and their last 2 have been really, really good, whether the self-titled one or Horizons, which are both really good. My favorite album from them is The Detached. It is an amazing album and considered one of the best progressive metal albums in the last decade. And it is an absolute must-hear and must-have. And if you do not have that, to me, that album is almost worth that box set alone, let alone the extra bonus tracks and all the things that they've never released before that you're going to get a chance to get with the set. I'm really, really excited to get my hands on it when it's available to me. And I think it's just going to be absolutely awesome. And I'm really excited. And we talk about this, we pay lip service to this all the time, about are people still buying music anymore? Well, here's an example of the little engine that could, Anubis Gate, great band that still not many people have heard of, and shame on you if you haven't. Shame on you if you haven't listened to their stuff. But for them to be able to hit that number and be able to produce, the albums in a much higher quality as far as sound is concerned on disc rather than it being digital or streamed or et cetera, et cetera. I'm just really excited for the band to be able to hit that mark, and really excited for stuff that they're going to be releasing in the semi-near future, because they do amazing, amazing work. And it's been really cool. One of the things that's been great about the show is to become friends with folks after the fact. And, if you would have told me 2 months ago that I would be friends with Kim Olsen from Anubis Gate on Facebook, I would have laughed in your face. And yet it's so cool that, you're able to be a part of someone's life, not only in music and listening to their stuff, but also seeing the human side of them. And that was the coolest part of it for me, is to see that goal and that be accomplished, not only for the fans, but for the bands themselves, for the band themselves, because that's a kick in the shorts if you can't raise enough money from your own fan base to be able to produce an album. You know what I mean? So to get that really shows that you still have some people who are really behind what you do. And I think that's awesome.
It is awesome. And speaking of awesome, one of my favorite newer metal bands, I guess, for lack of a better term, 6 a.m. Is coming out with a double CD that I'm really looking forward to. Of course, featuring Nikki Sixx, DJ Ashba. But I really loved their first CD, and I cannot wait until this double CD comes out. What are your thoughts on that, Jason? Are you a 6 a.m. fan at all?
Yeah, no, I love Nikki Sixx. I really respect what he does, and the fact that he's still alive is amazing.
Well, anyway, that's true. That's what the whole first CD was about.
Exactly. But I will say that a double album in this day and age, it can be risky. It really can. And the question is it 2 albums that could stand on their own? Or do you have a lot of filler in those 2 albums? I don't know. We'll wait and see, and certainly review that later on in the show.
Oh, absolutely. That'll be one we review on the show. Speaking of reviews,
it's time for new metal album reviews.
Let me tell you something you won't understand. Let me tell you, if you can't step it, I'm just go home, mama's boy. Go tell your mother, go home. Your constant stream of bragging shows the truth behind that smile. Your coverage blown, real motives known. Being mama's not your style. Keep a distance, I'm just...
That was Mama's Boy, off of For Crying Out Loud, which is the debut album from Shiraz Lane, the first album we're going to review here on According to Metal. And really cool story about these guys. Very young band, started by 2 females, actually, the drummer and their lead singer. And from Finland, which shouldn't surprise you, you're really starting to see a huge, huge scene in the Scandinavian countries and in a lot of parts of Europe of a very LA 80s style GNR Skid Row like vibe going on in Europe, which is really, really cool. And Shiraz Lane definitely has a lot of that vibe. But this is a band that was at a hard rock contest in Helsinki, Finland. They did very, very well. They then went on and played their first gig, if you will, outside of Finland, which was at the Hard Rock in Toronto. Frontiers Records heard them, wanted to sign them up to do a full album. They released an EP, really good reviews so far on the EP, and now here we are with their their first full-length album, For Crying Out Loud. This is the kind of band that I think is right up Biv's alley. And again, as you know, if you've listened to the show before, we do not discuss anything in the reviews prior to recording them and sharing them with you now. So we've had no prior discussion up until this, but when I heard a song from these guys and I saw that this album just came out, I said, okay, this is right up Biv's alley. This is in his wheelhouse. So I'm going to turn it over to Biv real quick. Biv, what did you think of Shiraz Lane's first album?
Very good. And Shiraz Lane is, you'd kind of talked about that scene kind of going back to the 80s, hair metal, kind of hairspray metal era. And these guys are in that same vein, in that same Finnish scene as bands like Crazy Licks, where it definitely is that 1986 feel all over again. But this album, for the most part, what the fuck was that?
I'll edit that out. Sorry.
All right. So this album, for the most part, is solid all the way through. If you enjoyed that mid to late 80s sound that came out of LA, as you touched on, your GNR and your Skid Rows and your LA Guns and Poison, etc. This is a band that will definitely, that could fit into your rotation very well.
Well, there's a couple things. When I heard the album starts off with Wake Up, which musically is really good, but vocally, the first song off the album, I go, uh-oh. This is not what I was hoping to hear. I think the vocals, at least in the first track, made me go, uh-oh. Musically, really good. Vocally, not so much. Let's see what we do here. And then we went into Mama's Boy, which is the second track, which is the song we just played. And it has a very, very GNR feel and kind of almost Mr. Brownstone-like, not lyrics, but vocally, where it's kind of... very quick rep, it's sung, but not really. Just a really, really good track in which, much better vocals on that song as well. And then what's cool is you hear GNR, you hear Skid Row, a lot. There's a couple, For Crying Out Loud, by the way, which is the title track of the album, very Rat-like feel even to me. But I've also noticed on a couple songs, and this is where I really, really started to like Shiraz Lane and really started to really get into this album a lot more, is once I heard the song Begging for Mercy, it had a very The Darkness vibe. And I love The Darkness, unapologetically a huge Darkness fan. And vocally, this song specifically sounds like something Justin Hawkins would have sang himself. My favorite song on the album, just because it just gives me a very, very kind of The Darkness vibe to it. And it's a really, really good record. I was really impressed. And as young as these guys are, it's going to be really exciting to see kind of where they go. And vocally, they have many different styles throughout the album. It's again, track one, Wake Up. Wasn't overly thrilled with it, but then as the album goes on and, just many different types of vocal styles throughout the album, I think where they stubbed their toe a little bit is on some of the slower stuff, some of the more ballad-esque tracks. To me, you'll lose me a little bit over there, but some of their upbeat stuff like, Mama's Boy, Begging for Mercy, Behind the Eight Ball is a really good song. Sounds very bluesy, like almost a Last in Line track. And For Crying Out Loud is a really good song too. MLNW, which is Make Love Not War, also sounds a lot like a song of The Darkness would do themselves. Just really, really solid debut album. I was pretty impressed with it. Biv, what was the final score you gave Shiraz Lane?
Well, before I go there, I want to say my favorite track on it was one you didn't mention at all, which is House of Cards.
Really?
Which is the third track. That's a phenomenal track. And you talked about the blues. I believe it's the fifth track, the fifth track. Same Old Blues is a good tune as well. Overall, I just see so much promise with this band. I really do. Like, if Biv had a bar, I'd let these guys be my house band.
That's well said.
So I'm going to give them a 7.5, and that might even go up as I listen to it more. I don't see it going down any. I was kind of between that 7.5 and 8. So I'm going to go conservative at 7.5. but it's something I'm definitely going to revisit. It's something that's going to be in my rotation. And I could see that score go up a little bit over time.
Yeah, I give it a pretty good solid 7, and that's because of half of the songs are really, really good, and half of them are, they're okay. But a lot of potential in this band, and I can't wait to hear what the future holds for Shiraz Lane. But check out the album. It's really, really good. Again, if you are a GNR fan, if you are just an 80s rock fan in general, for crying out loud, Shiraz Lane's debut or first full release album